What's going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. I think we got an interesting video here today. You could say this is one where it's like, did CGC make a mistake on this? And I mean, personally, there's a yes and a no here. So this is about a unboxing that somebody posted about recently on one of the Facebook groups. And so this is that unboxing. And they had mixed reactions from their return from CGC. They agreed with some of them, they disagreed with some of them. And I wanted to talk about a couple of the books that they disagreed with. One of them a little bit more because it's a big risk that you take when you do something like this. And so it's one of those areas where generally I say, like, yeah, the purpose of grading is so that people don't have to know how to grade and all of that. And so that you've got this third party that's telling you the grade of the book, and that helps establish the value. But if you are someone that is going to be cracking books out, that is a different story. If you are cracking a book out, if you're sending a book back into CGC for any reason, you need to really understand grading well, because you are potentially taking a big risk. And so we're going to talk about two books here. The first one is this one that's up on the screen right here. So this is Werewolf by Night 32, first appearance of Moon Knight. You can see here, this book has this signature, this Al Milgrom signature. It was a 6.0 and a blue label. And so he had cracked this book out, gotten it signed, I think he said at a con, and then he sent it in to CGC to get the JSA certified label. And so it was a 6.0, and he was not happy with how this book came back. And so now, one thing, like if you were sending a book back in, like for after signatures and all that, there's always risks, right? Like books can drop in grade. It's just something that happens. And so this one here, he had a 6.0, and when it came back, we'll jump ahead a little bit. You can see it came back a 5.0. And so this book, I thought we would take a closer look at. And so I had froze this screen, and I grabbed the serial number so I could take a closer look at the book. Because it's one of those things where it's like when you're looking at it in a small little video like this, it's like, oh yeah, it looks fine. You know, you can't really tell what the flaws are. It's hard to say. So we jump over to CGC. We look up this book here. You know, we put in the cert number, and you can see Grader's notes, Al Milgrom autograph, deemed authentic by JSA, multiple crease, cover breaks color, light fox into cover, Al Milgrom authenticated autograph. So like at a distance, you're like, yeah, man, it's like this, maybe this could have been a 6.0. All right, maybe, you know, with CGC being harsh. Then you take a close look at this book, and this spine is in rough shape. So, I mean, so you look here, you've got crease. It's the ones that really tell you it's rough are when you start having these horizontal creases. That's when it's taken quite a bit of damage. And so you've got multiple pretty significant horizontal creases in addition to these fairly long vertical creases. I mean, I was talking with someone else about this one, and we both agreed that we would not have been surprised if this came back somewhere in the 4s, like a 4 or 4.5. And, you know, this one came back a 5.0, which is still reasonable. And I'll say the reason it probably came back a 5 is because when you look at the overall book, like the rest of it is pretty nice. You know, there's little bits of, you know, damage along the edge, but it's like this. I was talking with this friend, and I was saying like it was maybe like it was like in a stack, and just like this end had been hanging out, you know, for like 10 years or 15 years or something, and getting damaged and all that. But this book has quite a bit of damage on this edge here. Personally, this book never should have been a 6.0. You know, I mean, with this type of damage, I would just never see a book with this type of damage on the spine being a 6.0. A 5.0 is probably as good as this book could ever hope to be. And so my point here is, when you are taking a book to crack out to get signed, you really have to be able to evaluate that book to determine if you think it can retain that grade, or if you're willing to have that grade potentially drop. This typically comes up more when you're talking about 9/8. There's, there's always that little bit like where, and I know this is going to really upset people, when with grading, and it's like, because it's not, it really isn't an exact science. There's always like a little bit of a range, and it can be like, usually you're talking about like a half grade. This one I think is a pretty extreme example. Like this just never should have been a 6. I think this was just poorly graded when it was graded. Usually you could say something is like a strong 5, a weak 5.5, or a strong, at the 9.8 side, you'd say like a strong 9.6, weak 9.8, where maybe it has like 2 spine ticks and you got that 9.8. You're never sending that book back into CGC. If you are, your likelihood of getting a 9.6 when it comes back, fairly high. And that's the type of thing where once it's in the case, if you don't like really, really understand the risks with grading, keep it in the case. If you understand the risks you're taking, sure, crack it out. You've got to be able to assess that book and go, this might not be the grade it says on here, or maybe I got a little bit of a gift on that one. And this is one of those books that I feel like that 6.0 was a real big gift, and it probably shouldn't have been cracked out. Now, it's not a huge financial loss with the book. Like if we go over to GPA and look at pricing, I mean, the last sale here, yeah, $800, but you can see the average for a 6.0 probably like 675, because you had the 12-month at 657, 687 here for the 90-day, and then you've got 800 for the last sale, and then at the 5.0, the 90 days 575, 12-month 577. So it's like this probably lost $100 in value. I mean, that's probably about what happened, plus all your grading fees and everything like that. But definitely to me, like this one is a case where you've got to be able to evaluate that book, and that's what I'm just saying. Like if you are looking at getting something signed, if you're cracking a book out of its case, you really have to understand the risk that you're taking there. Like there's certain books that just should never see the inside of CGC again. 9.9s, 10.0s, those are absolutely examples. But then when you're cracking something out and you're really hoping to keep a grade, you've got to know the risks. And to me, this book, and let me know what you think. Like this should never have been a 6, and it should have just like you keep that one in that case. You never let that book back out, because I am not surprised at all that this came back a 5, and even a 5. I mean, with all these horizontal creases is a little generous potentially. But like I said, I think the reason it kept it is the rest of the book is very nice. And so that's why, it was able to retain that 5. Because I mean, the back is really nice too. I mean, there's a little bit of foxing, but like the back is very clean, and just has this foxing kind of down here. But back is very clean. So it's like, I don't think that the back cover caused anything, but that spine is rough. Now, the other book I wanted to talk about, so I think this was the first one maybe that he got out. No, a little bit late. It had some cool stuff. Was this one here? So this is Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes number 23. Probably the best Adam Hughes cover ever. I mean, this is just awesome Supergirl cover. Like, I mean, it's got to be the best Adam Hughes cover. I mean, maybe there's another one out there that's better, but to me, I think it's the best Adam Hughes cover. It's this variant. It's pretty valuable book, especially in high grade. But if we go over here and, we just take a look at this one, like you can see here, like a 9.2, 700, 8.0 hasn't sold for a number of years, 300. It's just one of those books that has high value regardless. Like a 9.8 is 1,000. Like even an 8.5 is probably $500, $450, $500, something like that. But this was one where, and this is something I feel like I got to talk about because I've seen this happen a number of times. You always have to make sure you're looking at, the front and the back cover. It's like both sides do get graded, and it really does matter. And so, because he was disappointed in the 8.5, and I'll honestly think, like, I think the 8.5, I wouldn't send this book back in, because I think he was maybe talking about sending it back in. I wasn't 100% sure, but I would not send this book back in. I think if you send this book back in, you may drop in grade. I think this could even be as low as a 7.5. So again, like I would be cautious with it. Now, this is one of those where it's like, it's a modern book. It's really sharp. Otherwise, it just has 2 very specific flaws. And he was talking about like some type of light bend or something that he just decided not to press out on the front because he was worried about pressing it too hard. That's not why this book got the grade it got. And again, this is one of those things where this is why, you go check the CGC site so you can get good close-up pictures of the book. We go look at this book, and yeah, the front cover looks pretty great. I mean, it's got little bits of flaws. It's got like a little thing up here. It's got like a couple little spine ticks. It has maybe a little color rub, but overall, a very nice book. Like if this was just the front cover, and it's because I can't tell if there's anything else. Like this might be like a 9.4, like maybe even a 9.6. Like this is a very, very nice copy of this book. But when you go to the back cover, that's when we see why this book got the grade that it got. And you've got a very defined crease up here in this corner. And then you have a couple very defined creases down in this corner. Now, this crease up in this corner here, if it was just this book might still have had a shot at about a 9. This looks like it's maybe a 1/2 inch. And, just like using like kind of like little grading cheat sheet, about a 1/2 inch. If that's the only flaw, a crease on a book, you can get a 9. And I've seen it plenty of times. You can get a 9. I've had one that was a little longer than a 1/2 inch, and it was just this upper left corner, and I got an 8.5. But when you add in this bottom corner here, this is multiple color breaking creases here that add up to more than that 1/2 inch. And when you add that to the one on the top, this is another, because everything else here very nice on this book. It's basically like there's a couple little things on the spine, and then it's these two flaws. These are the perfect types of examples for when you're looking at how individual flaws affect the grade of a book. And I mean, I would say that those creases, they add up to about an inch, maybe even more, especially when you've got multiple creases down here. And to me, that puts the absolute top end that I would have expected for this book at an 8. And so this is an example of one where this was not undergraded. Like CGC did not make a mistake on this book, and except maybe even like at the great overgrading it a little bit. It's one of those things, like I know Matt Nelson said it in one of his interviews before. It's like the overall appeal of the book really can have an impact though. And so that's why it's like everything else is so nice, like that maybe that's why it could get that 8.5. But I feel like, to me, like an 8.5 is just a little bit high. I'm not going to criticize too much on like a half grade, that kind of stuff. But they do call it out in the grader's note: small crease top left back cover, small crease left bottom back cover. And it should almost be creases, but yeah. So this is another one of those books that, in this case, I think they either got it right or even a little strong. But I think he had mentioned he was thinking about sending this one back in, and just do not do not send this book back in. This is an example of one you don't crack it out to get signed or anything. You do not send this one back in, because the likelihood, to me, of this book dropping to an 8, or in worst case like a 7.5, is absolutely there. And so you got to keep this book in that case. Be happy that you got the 8.5. But yeah, I thought I'd talk about this one because I think just like sometimes, especially with a lot of people, they'll focus so much on the front cover, they maybe miss some flaws, some very glaring flaws that are on the back. Like I said, I've seen it a number of times with other videos I've watched with people doing unboxings, and so I thought this was a perfect example of that. That flaws in the back cover definitely are what held this book back. And then with this one, if you're cracking books out for signatures, you got to know, like, you need to be very confident in the grade of that book, or you are absolutely taking a risk that that thing's going to drop. And in this case, lost a full grade. But hopefully enjoy this video. Hopefully this helps you with some decisions that you might make when you're cracking books out to send them in for grading, all that kind of stuff. But if you did, please hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.